You know what really grinds my mandibles? Hubris. The absolute, unbridled arrogance of believing you are at the top of the food chain when you are actually just another link. Oh, and bureaucracy. That's equally annoying. Officer Krex, your report on Human Containment Facility 6 is 3 cycles overdue, said Administrator Paz, his voice buzzing with the particular frequency that indicated he was enjoying reprimanding me. I flicked my tertiary antennae in the Vasilian gesture for noted but ignored and continued studying the surveillance feed. Paz couldn't see the gesture from his position behind me, which was precisely why I made it. Did you hear me, officer? Paz's voice rose an octave, his bioluminescent patches flaring that awful shade of purple that made him look like an overripe fruiting body. With these auditory receptors? I tapped my hearing organs. Hard not to, Administrator. Your voice carries like a mating call in breeding season. Several nearby technicians stifled their respiratory vents in what humans would call a laugh. Paz's entire exoskeleton turned a deep, embarrassed blue. The High Council wants updates, Krex. The humans are their pet project, and you are the one observing them. So observe and report. Or would you prefer reassignment to waste management on the mining colonies? I swiveled my eye stalks toward him. Apologies, Administrator. The report will be on your neural feed by end of cycle. Paz chittered in satisfaction and scuttled away, his segmented legs clicking across the polished floor. Insufferable hive mind reject, I muttered, turning back to the screens. My assistant, Traz, bobbed her head in agreement. You really shouldn't antagonize him, she said, her voice soft. He could make your life very difficult. More difficult than watching these humans day after day waiting for something interesting to happen. I gestured at the screens showing various habitats where our human specimens lived, blissfully unaware they were being monitored. Look at them, Traz. Eating, sleeping, talking, mating, over and over. The same boring patterns. Yet the High Council considers them dangerous, Traz reminded me, her pale green eyes blinking thoughtfully. Hence the elaborate containment protocols. I scoffed. Dangerous? They don't even have natural weapons. No claws, no venom, their teeth are laughable, and their physical strength is mediocre at best. The only reason we are studying them is because they managed to develop technology despite their obvious biological limitations. And their psychological evaluations? Traz asked. Ew, unpredictable, yes, but that hardly makes them apex predators. It makes them erratic prey animals with tools. One of the monitors showed a human male, designation Jack Morrison, exercising in his habitat, running nowhere on a circular track, lifting weights and putting them down again. Purposeless exertion that never changed his circumstances. See, even in captivity, they maintain these pointless rituals, and no real survival advantage. Traz gestured to another screen showing a female human, Luna Vasquez, carefully tending to plants in her habitat's garden area. They are adaptable, though. Look how she's modified the standard vegetation plot into something more aesthetically pleasing. Adaptable, sure, but so are parasites. Doesn't make them apex anything. The main door to the monitoring center slid open with a pneumatic hiss, and Science Director Zovix entered. All 12 of his eyes swept the room before settling on me. Officer Krex, just who I wanted to see. Science Director, I acknowledged with a respectful dip of my head crest. Unlike Paz, Zovix had earned my respect through actual accomplishments rather than bureaucratic maneuvering. Walk with me, Zovix said. Not a request. I followed him out into the corridor, leaving Traz to monitor the feeds. The facility's sterile white hallway stretched in every direction, a labyrinth of research labs, containment areas, and administrative sections. Your reports have been, Zovix paused, searching for the right word, perfunctory. There's nothing to report, Director. The humans behave exactly as predicted by our models. Zovix's brow ridge furrowed. Then you are not paying attention, Officer Krex. Subtle changes have been occurring. Behavioral shifts that concern me, such as their social dynamics are evolving. The isolated specimens are finding ways to communicate, I clicked my mandibles dismissively. Impossible. Each habitat is completely isolated from the others. Different atmospheric controls, separate water systems, no shared spaces. Yet somehow information is traveling between them. For instance, 3 cycles ago, human specimen Olivia Taylor in Habitat 2 developed a new exercise routine. Within 2 days, 4 other specimens in different habitats began practicing identical movements. Coincidence, I said, or parallel development? They are not completely dissimilar from each other. Volok stopped walking and turned all his eyes directly on me. There are no coincidences in proper science, officer, only variables we haven't yet identified. With respect, Director, you are seeing patterns where none exist. It's a known cognitive bias even among our species. Then explain this, Volk said, extending a data tablet. 3 supply technicians have reported missing items over the past month. Small things, a length of fiber optic cable, some conductive material, 2 standard tools. Sloppy inventory management, I suggested, perhaps. But combined with the synchronized behaviors, it concerns me. I want you to conduct thorough physical inspections of all habitats. Look for anything unusual, anything the humans might be using to communicate or other purposes. I took the tablet, scanning the list of missing items. You think the humans stole these? How would they even access our supply areas? I don't know, Volks admitted. That's what troubles me. Begin with Habitat 6. That's where the newest specimen arrived last cycle. Daniel Reed, I recalled. Former military, according to his extracted memories. Yes, and he's been displaying particularly interesting behaviors. Spend some time observing him directly, not just through the monitors. As you wish, Director. Volks nodded and continued down the corridor alone, his long robes sweeping the floor behind him. I made my way to Habitat 6's observation chamber, a small room with one-way transparent walls looking into the human's living space. Daniel Reed was sitting at a small desk, apparently writing something on paper, another primitive behavior we allowed them to maintain for psychological stability. The habitat was designed to resemble standard human living quarters based on our extensive studies: sleeping area, hygiene station, food preparation surface, recreation space. Nothing that could be weaponized or used for escape. Everything monitored. I settled into the observation chair and activated the enhanced audio to hear what Reed was mumbling to himself. Day 43, by my count, he was saying quietly as he wrote. Still no direct contact with my captors. Food appears at regular intervals. Lights dim and brighten on what I assume is their schedule, not Earth's. Exercise equipment provided suggests they want me to maintain physical condition. Standard observations. Nothing we didn't expect. Figured out the observation points, Reed continued, and my antennae stiffened in attention. Main wall is definitely one-way glass or equivalent. Ceiling has at least 3 camera-like devices. Bathroom is monitored too, which is just rude. He knew he was being watched? That wasn't in any of the reports I'd read. Reed stood up and stretched, his muscular frame moving with a fluid grace that seemed purposeful. He walked to the center of the room and began exercising simple calisthenics that all the specimens performed. But as I watched, I noticed something odd. Slight pauses in his movements, repetitions that seemed to emphasize certain positions. Was he communicating through body language? And if so, to whom? I checked the adjacent habitats on my tablet. To the left, Luna Vasquez was gardening, seemingly oblivious to Reed. To the right, Jack Morrison was also exercising, but his routine appeared completely different. For the next hour, I observed Reed as he cycled through various activities, exercising, reading from the limited library we provided, preparing and eating a meal, even napping briefly. Nothing suspicious. Just as I was about to leave, convinced Volax was being paranoid, Reed did something unexpected. He walked to the small sink in his habitat, turned on the water, and let it run while he leaned close to the drain and whispered something I couldn't hear over the running water. I immediately adjusted the audio settings. but the water created too much interference. Clever. He knew about our surveillance capabilities too. When Reed turned off the water and moved away from the sink, his posture had changed. There was a new tension in his shoulders, a slight smile on his face that hadn't been there before. I decided to report this to Volax immediately, but first I wanted to check something. I pulled up the surveillance logs for the other habitats during the same time period. Reed had been at the sink. Luna Vasquez had been at her sink too, ostensibly washing soil from her hands. Jack Morrison had been in his hygiene station with water running. 3 other specimens in other habitats showed similar patterns. "They are communicating," I murmured to myself. "But how?" I rushed back to the monitoring center, almost colliding with Traz in the doorway. "Officer Krex." "I was just coming to find you," she said, her voice pitched higher than normal, a sign of distress in our species. "What's happened?" "It's Technician Zor. He was conducting routine maintenance in the lower service tunnels that run beneath the habitats, and he's gone." "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "People don't just disappear in a secure facility. His biosignal vanished 20 minutes ago. Security teams are searching, but—" I pushed past her into the monitoring center and brought up the service tunnel schematics on the main screen. Where exactly was he working? Traz pointed to a junction beneath habitats 5 and 6, this section here. He was checking the water reclamation systems. "Show me the security feed for that area." "That's part of the problem," Traz said. "The cameras in that section went offline shortly before Zor's biosignal disappeared." A cold feeling spread through my thoracic cavity. "Show me the last footage we have." Traz brought up the recording. Technician Zor was visible, a stocky figure in maintenance coveralls, checking panel readings along the tunnel wall. He reached up to adjust something, and the feed cut to static. "What's directly above that section?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The floor of Habitat 6. Daniel Reed's quarters." I immediately brought up the current feed from Reed's habitat. He was sitting calmly at his desk again, writing. "Has he left the habitat at any point today?" Traz checked the logs. "No, officer. The habitat door has remained sealed, and the monitors show his presence continuously. Check for any gaps in the recording. Any momentary glitches, loops, anything." Traz ran the analysis. "Nothing, sir. The feed has been continuous." I stared at Reed on the screen. He looked up suddenly, as if sensing my scrutiny, and smiled directly at the camera. A chill ran through my exoskeleton. "Lock down all habitats," I ordered. "No personnel in or out without direct authorization from me or Director Volax. And I want a full security team to meet me at Habitat 6 in 10 minutes. "Are we conducting an inspection?" Traz asked. "No," I said grimly. "We are conducting an interrogation." By the time I reached Habitat 6 with 6 armed security officers, the facility alarm was blaring. Not because of my lockdown order, but because 2 more staff members had disappeared, both from areas near the human habitats. Director Volz met us outside Reed's door, his normally composed features contorted with worry. "3 missing in less than an hour," he said without preamble. "This cannot be coincidence." "I agree," I said, "and I believe it starts with this specimen." I nodded toward Reed's door. "You think 1 human is responsible for 3 of our people vanishing?" Volks sounded skeptical. "Not just 1 human. I believe they are coordinating somehow, working together despite the isolation protocols. I've considered this. Even if that's true, they cannot physically leave their habitats. The doors are biometrically locked to our species signatures only." "Then we are missing something," I insisted. "And I intend to find out what it is." I approached the habitat door and activated the intercom. "Daniel Reed. This is Officer Krex. I'm entering your habitat with security personnel. Remain seated at your desk." Reed looked up at the camera and nodded, setting down his writing implement and placing his hands flat on the desk surface, a cooperative gesture that somehow made me more suspicious rather than less. The door slid open after scanning my biosignature, and I entered with 2 security officers, leaving the others outside with Volks. The habitat seemed smaller when standing inside it, the human proportions making everything slightly off from my species' dimensions. Reed smiled pleasantly. "Hello there!" I was wondering when we'd finally meet face to face. His calm demeanor was unsettling. Most specimens showed fear or at least surprise at their first direct contact with us. "You don't seem alarmed by my appearance," I noted. Reed shrugged. "I have seen you watching me through the glass, and the others before you. I have had time to get used to how you look." "Others? You have been aware of our observation?" "From day one," Reed said, leaning back in his chair. "Your one-way glass isn't as one-way as you think. Not when the light hits it at certain angles. I filed that information away for later. Several of our staff have gone missing today. Do you know anything about that?" Reed's expression remained neutral. "How would I? I have been in here the whole time. Your cameras can confirm that. Yet you have found ways to communicate with the other specimens, despite our isolation protocols." At this, Reed's eyebrows rose slightly, a human expression of surprise or interest. "Have I? That's an interesting theory." "It's not a theory. We have observed synchronized behaviors across multiple habitats. Information is spreading among you." "How?" Reed leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Maybe you are not as good at containment as you think you are." One of the security officers shifted nervously behind me. I maintained my composure, though my instincts were screaming danger. "Stand up," I ordered Reed. "We are conducting a full inspection of this habitat." Reed complied without protest, moving to stand in the center of the room with his arms slightly away from his sides, another cooperative gesture that seemed rehearsed rather than natural. I nodded to the security officers, who began scanning the habitat with advanced detection devices, checking for any anomalies, hidden compartments, or unauthorized technology. "You won't find anything," Reed said confidently. "Then you have nothing to worry about." As the security team worked methodically through the habitat, I studied Reed more closely. His body language was relaxed, but there was an alertness in his eyes that suggested he was assessing us just as much as we were assessing him. "Why are you keeping us here?" Reed asked suddenly. "For study," I answered. "Your species is of scientific interest." "Just scientific interest? Not military application? Not because you are afraid of us?" "Afraid?" I couldn't help the dismissive click of my mandibles. "Your species is physically inferior to ours in every measurable way." Reed smiled. "Yet here you are with armed guards because a few of your people went missing. Sounds like fear to me." Before I could respond, one of the security officers called out, "Officer Krex, there's something here you should see." I moved to the bathroom area where the officer was scanning the floor near the shower drain. The scanner showed an anomaly beneath the flooring, a small cavity that shouldn't exist. "Remove the floor panel," I ordered. The officer used a tool to pry up the section of flooring, revealing a small space underneath. Inside was a crude device made from what appeared to be repurposed materials, the missing items from our inventory, I realized. "What is this?" I demanded, turning to Reed. His smile never wavered. "Looks like a transmitter to me. Basic stuff. I'm surprised your advanced species didn't detect it sooner." The security officer scanned the device. "It's emitting a low-frequency signal that appears to be traveling through the water pipes." "The water pipes," I repeated, the pieces falling into place. "That's how you have been communicating. It's through the plumbing system that connects all the habitats." "Give the alien a prize," Reed said, his tone mocking. I turned to the second security officer. "Check all the habitats. Look for similar devices near water sources." Then to the first officer, "Disable it." As the officer reached for the device, Reed's demeanor changed instantly. The relaxed posture vanished, replaced by coiled tension. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." The officer hesitated, looking to me for direction. "Proceed," I ordered. The moment the officer touched the device, all the lights in the habitat went out, plunging us into darkness. The emergency systems kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in a red glow. Reed was gone. Where did he go? I spun around, scanning the small habitat. There was nowhere to hide. A scream from outside the habitat answered my question. I rushed to the door, which was now stuck half open due to the power fluctuation. Squeezing through, I emerged into chaos. The security officers who had remained outside were on the floor, unmoving. Director Volks was backed against the far wall, his eyes wide with terror, facing Daniel Reed. Except it wasn't Reed. Not exactly. The figure looked like Reed, but its movements were wrong, too fluid, too precise. And its skin seemed to ripple slightly, as if something beneath it was shifting. "What are you?" Volks gasped. The Reed thing tilted its head. The apex predator, it said, its voice a perfect imitation of Reed's but somehow hollow, wearing human skin. And then it moved, faster than anything I'd ever seen. Volks didn't even have time to scream before the creature was upon him, its form changing, flowing around him like liquid before solidifying again. Where two beings had stood, now there was only one, a perfect copy of Director Volks. "Much better," the thing said in Volks's voice, flexing his limbs experimentally. "The human form is so limiting." I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to process what I was seeing. The creature that looked like Volks turned to me. "Ah, Officer Krex. Just the bureaucrat I wanted to see." It smiled with Volks's mouth, but the expression was all wrong. "We have so much to discuss about your containment protocols. They are really quite ineffective." The facility alarms continued to wail, but they seemed distant now, irrelevant in the face of this impossible thing. I finally found my voice. "What have you done with the real humans?" The Volks thing laughed. "Oh, they are here. They have always been here, watching, learning, waiting for us to arrive." "Us? There are more of you?" "Any more. Coming through the gap you so helpfully created when you took your specimens from Earth." My mind raced. The missing staff. The communications between habitats. It hadn't been the humans coordinating, it had been these things. "The humans," I managed to ask, "are they working with you?" The creature's expression turned contemplative. "Not exactly. Think of them more as bait, the perfect lure to study your species. After all, what better way to understand prey than to watch how it hunts?" A cold realization washed over me. We hadn't been the ones studying the humans. Something else had been studying us, using the humans as a means to an end. And now, as facility alarms blared and more screams echoed from distant corridors, I understood Director Volks's earlier words with perfect clarity. There are no coincidences in proper science, only variables we haven't yet identified. We had identified the wrong predator. We had contained the wrong species. And now something far worse than human was wearing our skin. The Volks thing stepped toward me, still smiling that wrong smile. "Now, Officer Krex, about that overdue report. Have you ever had that moment when your entire understanding of the universe collapses around you? When everything you thought you knew turns out to be spectacularly, catastrophically wrong?" Yeah, that was me, standing in that corridor, watching something that looked like Director Volks but very much wasn't. "Your report," the Volks thing repeated, taking another step toward me. I'm still waiting for it. My survival instincts finally kicked in. I lunged for the emergency containment controls on the wall panel, slamming my appendage against the button. Reinforced barriers began descending from the ceiling throughout the corridor. The creature wearing Volks's form looked more annoyed than concerned. "Really, Officer Krex? Physical barriers?" I backed away as a barrier slammed down between us, sealing off the section of corridor where the thing stood. Through the transparent material, I could see it sigh, a disturbingly accurate mimicry of Volks's mannerisms. "This is just going to make things more complicated," it said, its voice slightly muffled by the barrier. My breathing was rapid. my exoskeleton quivering with what humans would call adrenaline. "What are you?" I demanded. "Didn't I just tell you?" "The apex predator." It pressed a hand, Volex's hand, against the barrier. "We have been waiting for someone to notice us for so long. Your species finally did, though you misunderstood what you were seeing." "The humans," I said, pieces clicking together in my mind. "You were hiding among them." The thing smiled. "Not exactly hiding, more like observing from within. Your kind noticed unusual brainwave patterns in certain humans, didn't you? Thought you'd found specimens worth studying?" The realization hit me like a physical blow. Our entire human collection program had been based on identifying unusual neural patterns that suggested advanced cognitive capabilities. We thought we were selecting the most interesting human specimens. "You wanted to be captured," I whispered. "Bingo. Give the bug a prize." The creature's face, Volx's face, split into a grin that was too wide, too many teeth. "Though I must say your containment methods were more thorough than we anticipated. Took us a while to figure out how to communicate between habitats." The emergency alert continued to wail throughout the facility. On the nearest monitor, I could see security teams mobilizing, sealing off sections, implementing standard containment protocols for a Level 1 biological threat. They had no idea what they were dealing with. "How many of you are there?" I asked, trying to keep it talking while I frantically thought of a way to warn the others. The Volx thing tilted its head. "Here, 6 at the moment. 1 for each of your human specimens. But back on Earth." It chuckled. "We have been living alongside humans for millennia. They never noticed us either until recently. They are starting to suspect something's not quite right. Hence our interest in alternative accommodations." "You are planning an invasion," I realized with horror. Such a dramatic word. "We prefer migration. Your planet has abundant resources, far fewer predators than Earth, and your species makes excellent hosts. Better than humans in many ways, more limbs to work with, for one thing." It pressed harder against the barrier, and to my horror, I saw the material begin to deform slightly, as if melting under intense heat. The creature's hand was changing, becoming something less solid, more fluid. "These barriers are molecularly bonded alloys," I said, my voice shaking. "Nothing can penetrate them." "Nothing you have encountered before," the thing corrected. "But we have had a long time to evolve. Adaptation is our specialty." I backed further away, bumping into someone behind me. Spinning around in panic, I came face to face with Traz, Officer Krex. "What's happening?" she asked, her eyes wide with fear. "The security systems are going haywire, and there are reports of attacks throughout the facility." I grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the barrier where the Volx thing was now pushing partially through, its arm elongating into something tentacle-like as it oozed through the supposedly impenetrable material. "We need to evacuate," I said urgently. "The containment has been breached, but not how we thought. The humans aren't the threat, they are being used by something else, something that can change shape and take our forms." Traz's antennae quivered in disbelief. "That's impossible. Our scanners would have detected." "They didn't," I snapped, "because we weren't looking for it. We were so focused on the humans that we missed what was hiding inside them." A wet, slithering sound made us both turn. The Volx thing had pushed halfway through the barrier now, its body stretching and contorting in ways that defied biology. "Run." I yanked Traz down the corridor. "We need to reach the central command center and initiate full facility quarantine." As we ran, the emergency lighting cast everything in a hellish red glow. The usual orderly operations of the research facility had descended into chaos. Staff members ran in all directions, some attempting to maintain protocol, others simply fleeing in terror. "The quarantine won't hold them," Traz said as we rounded a corner. "If that thing can get through a molecular barrier." "It might slow them down," I interrupted. "Give us time to warn the fleet." We reached an intersection where the corridor split into 3 directions. Suddenly, A group of security officers appeared from the left passage, weapons raised. Officer Krex. The lead security officer, Mavic, approached cautiously. We have reports of shape-shifting intruders, staff members being attacked and replaced. It's true, I confirmed. The entities were hiding within the human specimens. They can take our forms after absorbing us. Mavic's grip tightened on his weapon. How can we identify them? How do we know who's real? An excellent question that sent a chill through my exoskeleton. How could we tell? The Volks thing had perfectly mimicked the director's appearance, voice, even his mannerisms. I don't know, I admitted. But they were originally contained in the human habitats. We need to secure those areas immediately and account for all specimens. Already tried, Mavic said grimly. Habitats 1 through 5 are empty. The humans are gone, along with whatever was inside them. What about the monitoring center? Traz asked. We could use the bioscanners too. Compromised, Mavic cut her off. Something that looked like Administrator Paz walked in there about 10 minutes ago. No one's responded to communications since. My mind raced. The facility's layout flashed through my thoughts, habitats, labs, security checkpoints, and the communication hub, I said suddenly. It's isolated, heavily shielded, and has its own power supply. If we can reach it, we can send a warning to the fleet. Mavic nodded. We will escort you. But we need to move fast. These things are spreading throughout the facility. Our group moved quickly but cautiously through the corridors. Every shadow, every sound made us freeze, weapons ready. Twice we encountered other staff members, but the paralyzing fear of potential imposters made every interaction tense and brief. How do I know you are really Officer Krex? Mavic asked suddenly as we paused at a sealed doorway, waiting for the security scan to complete. You don't, I answered honestly, and I don't know if you are really Mavic. But right now our goals align, stop these things from spreading beyond the facility. The door slid open, revealing a dimly lit maintenance tunnel, a shortcut to the communication hub. We filed in, the security officers taking positions at front and rear of our group. These things, Traz whispered as we moved through the narrow passage. What do they want? New hosts, I replied. New worlds to infect. They have been on Earth for millennia, hiding among humans. Now they want to expand. But why now? Why us? Before I could answer, a scream echoed from the rear of our group. We spun around to see one of the security officers being enveloped by something that had dropped from the ceiling, a writhing mass of fluid-like substance that covered him completely within seconds. Fire. Mavic ordered, and the remaining officers opened fire with their plasma weapons. The energy blasts tore through the creature, creating holes in its mass that immediately closed again. The thing continued reshaping itself, absorbing the officer within its bulk. The weapons are useless, I shouted. Keep moving. We ran, the sound of wet, slithering movement behind us growing louder. The tunnel seemed endless, each turn looking identical to the last in the emergency lighting. There. Traz pointed ahead to a reinforced door marked with the communications symbol. That's the hub entrance. Mavic reached it first, slapping his hand against the biometric scanner. The door remained closed. It's not recognizing me. The system's probably in lockdown, I said, pushing him aside to access the manual override. My fingers flew across the keypad, entering the emergency access codes that only senior officers knew. The thing behind us was getting closer, its mass expanding as it moved, taking on a vaguely humanoid shape. Officer Krex. Traz urged, her voice tight with fear. The door finally slid open with a hydraulic hiss, and we rushed inside. I immediately hit the emergency seal button, and reinforced shutters slammed down over the entrance. The communication hub was empty, a small, circular room filled with transmission equipment and monitoring stations. The main console glowed with standby lights. Check for any other entrances. I ordered the remaining security officers. I moved to the main console. Traz, help me establish a direct link to Fleet Command. Traz joined me at the console, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. The automated quarantine protocols have already locked down all standard communications, she reported. But the emergency channel should still be. A loud bang against the sealed door interrupted her. Then another. Something was trying to get in. Work faster, Mavic said, positioning his officers in a defensive perimeter around us. I accessed the emergency broadcast system, bypassing the standard authorization protocols with my override codes. This is Research Facility 6, Officer Krex reporting. We have a Level 10 containment breach. Unknown shape-shifting entities have infiltrated the facility. They can assume the form of any staff member they consume. Traz looked up from her station. No response from Fleet Command. The signal's going out, but I can't confirm they are receiving. Another bang at the door, louder this time. The reinforced metal was beginning to dent inward. Send it on all frequencies, I said, and access the facility's self-destruct system. Mavic's head whipped around. Self-destruct? That's the only way to ensure these things don't spread. I finished for him. If they reach our homeworld or any of our colonies. The implications hung in the air. None of us needed to voice what would happen if shape-shifting predators that could perfectly mimic our species were let loose among our population. Traz hesitated, then nodded grimly, accessing self-destruct protocols. The banging at the door grew more insistent. The metal was now visibly warping, small gaps appearing around the edges where something was pushing through, not solid but fluid, like mercury but darker. How long do you need? Mavic asked, raising his weapon toward the failing door. 2 minutes to bypass the safety interlocks, Traz replied, her voice steady despite the circumstances. You will have one, Mavic said. He turned to his officers. In defensive positions. Buy them time. The door buckled further, a thin tendril of the creature's substance squeezing through a gap at the top. I worked frantically alongside Traz, our appendages flying over the controls. We need to set the longest possible delay, I said. Give any unaffected staff time to reach the escape pods. 5 minutes is the maximum, Traz replied. After that, the system requires command authorization. The door finally gave way with a screech of tearing metal. What poured through wasn't a single entity but a writhing mass of them, 3 or 4 distinct shapes that immediately began to separate and reform. The security officers opened fire, their weapons creating momentary disruptions in the creature's forms but little lasting damage. Almost there, Traz said, her voice tight with concentration. Bypassing final security lockout. One of the creatures lunged forward with frightening speed, engulfing the nearest security officer before he could even scream. Another officer backed away, still firing, until he pressed against the communications console. Mavic stood his ground, weapon blazing. Hurry. Done. Traz announced. Self-destruct initiated. 5-minute countdown commencing. A mechanical voice confirmed over the facility's speakers, attention all personnel. Self-destruct sequence initiated. 5 minutes until detonation. Proceed to emergency evacuation points immediately. The creatures paused, as if processing this new information. Then, to my horror, one of them began to change shape, forming a mouth-like opening that emitted sounds, words. That won't stop us, it said, the voice a disturbing blend of multiple tones. There are already more of us in your escape pods, waiting. It's lying, Mavic insisted, still firing. Trying to make us stay and die. No, I said, a terrible certainty settling over me. It's telling the truth. They are always one step ahead. They wanted us to activate the self-destruct. Why would they want that? Traz asked, backing away from the advancing creatures. The answer came to me in a flash of clarity. Because the explosion would be investigated. Ships would come, more potential hosts. The creatures were reforming now, taking on the appearances of the security officers they had absorbed. One of them, wearing the face of the officer who had been taken first, smiled at me. Very good, Officer Krex. Your species is quite intelligent. That's why we chose you. 4 minutes to self-destruct, the mechanical voice announced. Mavic fired one last desperate shot before a creature engulfed him from behind, wrapping around his body like a living shroud. It was down to just Traz and me now, backed against the far wall of the communication hub, with nowhere left to run. "Can we abort the self-destruct?" Traz whispered. I shook my head. "Not without command authorization. And even if we could, maybe it's better this way. Let's contain the infection." The creatures advanced slowly now, almost leisurely. They knew we were trapped. "But you said it yourself," Traz argued. "The explosion will just bring more ships." Yes, I agreed. Unless a desperate plan formed in my mind. I turned to the communication console one last time, fingers flying across the controls. "What are you doing?" Traz asked. "Changing the self-destruct parameters," I replied, working frantically. "Increasing the yield, modifying the reaction type." The nearest creature, still wearing the face of a security officer, tilted its head curiously. "That won't save you." "It's not meant to," I said, not looking up from my work. "It's meant to ensure nothing survives, not even microscopic particles of your kind." Understanding dawned in the creature's eyes, too human, too expressive for the monstrosity behind them. "A antimatter cascade. You are overriding the containment protocols on the research reactors." 3 minutes to self-destruct, the mechanical voice announced. "If I do this right," I said, "the explosion won't just destroy the facility. It will create a temporary spatial rupture. Nothing will be left to investigate, because there will be nothing left at all." Traz placed her hand on my arm. "The colony ships in orbit will detect the buildup and have time to move to safe distance," I finished. "But nothing will be able to approach this location for decades." The creatures were no longer advancing. They seemed to be communicating silently among themselves, their forms rippling slightly as if agitated. "You would sacrifice yourself?" one of them asked. "To protect my species?" Yes. I entered the final command sequence. Cascade initiation confirmed. Primary containment fields disengaging on detonation. 2 minutes to self-destruct. The creatures suddenly rushed forward, all pretense of human form abandoned as they flowed like living liquid across the floor and walls. Traz, the emergency shaft. I pointed to a maintenance access point in the floor, designed for technicians to reach the wiring beneath the console. Traz yanked the cover open and dropped down into the narrow space below. I moved to follow, but something wrapped around my leg, a tendril from one of the creatures. "You are coming with us, Officer Krex," it said, its voice now a chorus of all those it had consumed. "Your mind has proven adaptable." I kicked frantically, trying to break free as the tendril began to crawl up my leg, spreading across my exoskeleton like a living stain. "Krex," Traz called from below. "Jump." With one final, desperate effort, I tore myself away from the creature's grasp, leaving a piece of my exoskeleton behind as I dropped through the opening. The shaft was tight, barely wide enough for us to squeeze through in single file. It sloped downward at a steep angle, taking us away from the communication hub and deeper into the facility's infrastructure. 1 minute to self-destruct. We scrambled downward, the sounds of pursuit echoing from above. The creatures were flowing into the shaft behind us, their fluid forms allowing them to move through the confined space with disturbing ease. "Where does this lead?" Traz asked, her voice tight with fear. "Maintenance level," I replied. "Near the emergency pods." "But you said the pods were compromised." "Most of them, probably. But there's one they won't know about. The prototype we were testing, completely separated from the main systems." We reached the bottom of the shaft and burst out into a dimly lit maintenance corridor. Emergency lights flashed and the evacuation alarm blared. 30 seconds to self-destruct. This way. I led Traz down the corridor, counting access panels as we ran. "Panel 47, 48 here, 49. I slapped my hand against what appeared to be a standard maintenance hatch. It slid open to reveal not a utility closet but a small, one-person emergency escape pod. "It's only designed for one occupant," I told Traz. She looked at me, understanding immediately. "You should go. You know how to warn the others." "No," I pushed her toward the pod. "You are going. I need to make sure the cascade initiates properly." "Krex, there's no time to argue." "Exactly," I agreed, shoving her into the pod. "Which is why you are going now." Before she could protest further, I hit the launch sequence and stepped back as the hatch sealed. Through the small viewport, I could see Traz's eyes wide with shock and sorrow. 20 seconds to self-destruct. The pod's engines ignited, and it shot away down the emergency launch tube that would take it clear of the facility. I turned to face the corridor just as the first of the creatures rounded the corner, flowing along the walls and ceiling like a nightmare given physical form. 10 seconds to self-destruct. "You have lost," I told it, standing my ground as it approached. "Even if you survive the initial explosion, the spatial rupture will scatter your atoms across half the system." The creature paused, then reformed into a shape that resembled Director Volk's once more. "Perhaps," it said. "Or perhaps we have already spread further than you know. Your evacuation protocols were most helpful in that regard." A cold fear gripped me. Had we been too late? Were there already infected ships heading toward our homeworld? 5, 4, 3. The creature lunged forward, its mass expanding to engulf me. I felt its cold, alien touch begin to spread across my body. 2, 1. In my final moment of awareness, as the creature's consciousness began to merge with mine, I glimpsed something unexpected in its alien thoughts, a flash of fear, not of death, but of something else, something it had encountered before. The humans. The real humans. Not the docile specimens we thought we had contained, but the species in its natural state. Unpredictable. Adaptable. Tenacious. The creature feared them because, unlike us, humans had recognized the threat. They had begun to fight back. Had started hunting the hunters. In that last fragment of understanding before the antimatter cascade tore reality apart around us, I finally comprehended the true relationship between the shapeshifters and humanity. The creatures hadn't been hiding among humans. They had been running from them. As the facility disintegrated in a blinding flash of energy, as the fabric of space itself twisted and tore, I realized we had never understood what apex predator truly meant. It wasn't the shapeshifters. It wasn't us. It was the humans who had been wearing the skins of prey animals all along. And somewhere beyond the growing spatial rupture, Traz's escape pod streaked toward the stars, carrying with it the truth about both the new threat and our most dangerous ally. The real apex predators were coming, and they were hunting. 3 cycles later, aboard the Vaslian colonial vessel Final Dawn, Commander Zovix reviewed the fragmented transmission for the 100th time. Most of it was corrupted. Radiation from the unexplained spatial anomaly that had completely destroyed Research Facility 6 had degraded the signal nearly beyond recognition. But one phrase remained clear, spoken in the voice of a junior research officer who had somehow survived the cataclysm. "They fear the humans," Officer Traz's voice stated firmly. "The shapeshifters are running from Earth, not invading it. Humans have been hunting them for generations. And if we want to survive, we need to find Earth. We need to make contact with humanity before the shapeshifters spread among us." Commander Zovix turned to his navigation officer. "Set course for the human homeworld. Maximum speed." As the massive ship altered its trajectory, aiming toward a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system, Zovix couldn't help but wonder what kind of species could inspire such terror in creatures that fed on fear itself. He suspected he would find out soon enough. After all, the apex predators were waiting.